Alright guys, today we're going to talk about how to dye your own SOLA wood flowers using acrylic paint from the dollar store and glycerin. And then we're going to make a bouquet together using some fake greenery. So what I used is just plain natural colored white cream colored SOLA wood flowers that you can get from ohyourlovely.com, and they come in all different shapes and sizes here. Specifically today I'm going to be using the 3-inch dahlias just because I think they're really unique looking. Turquoise acrylic paint, paint brushes, something to dry your SOLA wood flowers in, 2 containers, I used a plastic one and a glass one, vegetable glycerin, measuring cup and boiling water, and we're ready to get dyeing our SOLA wood flowers. Okay, so step 1 is to boil your water, and don't be like me and drop your water because that is very dangerous and very clumsy. Okay, so the first thing you're going to want to do in this process is to combine your boiling water and glycerin, and we'll talk about measurements in just a second here. Glycerin is essentially like an oil. It's also called glycerol, and it's just a clear, goopy liquid that is soft. It makes your flowers softer. Don't be like me and make the mistake I made in my first SOLA wood video here. I just went ahead and dyed my flowers using acrylic and watercolors without any glycerin, and so the natural, pretty, soft SOLA wood flower that you see here right out of the bag, right out of the box, actually became pretty crunchy after I dyed it. So you can see here on the left, this is my acrylic paint flower, and then on the right, my watercolor paint flower. So you can see the difference in the coloration here as well. With acrylic paint, you get kind of a darker color, and with watercolor, you have more of this washed out lighter color, which is fine if that's what you're going for. But I prefer the more saturated colors in general. So all of these other ones, these orange ones, were done with acrylic paint, but the problem still is that you need glycerin to soften them up. So the edges are kind of sharp here. When you go to like squish them, they're just really crunchy and vulnerable to being broken. So anyway, glycerin is important for softening up your flowers. I got mine on Amazon. I got this little bottle here, and I just squirted it into my measuring container. I did 1 part glycerin to 5 parts water because this is just a combination that I heard online, so I decided to try it out. So I used 100 milligrams of glycerin to 500 milligrams of boiling water. It all felt very scientific. And so, yep, I just combined it into this larger container here, glass container, as it was boiling, and mixed it up. I waited for a little while just to make sure that the water was cool enough to touch, cool enough to put my hands in, and when it was okay, I just started dunking my dry SOLA wood flowers into the mixture here. So make sure the water is not boiling when you start dunking your flowers into the water glycerin mixture. Personally, I really love how the flowers look undyed. I like their natural creamy color, so I think I actually might keep my flowers like this when I use them in my own wedding. But the cool thing about SOLA flowers is that you can dye them any color you want. You can personalize them in any shade of any color that you want. And the great thing about acrylic paint is that it's really cheap. I just got mine from the dollar store. And vegetable glycerin is also not too expensive. I'll drop links to all of the products that I'm using in this video down below, as well as a coupon for ohyourlovely.com. You can get 20% off if you use my coupon. And when it came to dyeing the flowers, I decided to take my glycerin water mixture and pour about half of it into a smaller container. And I didn't read about this anywhere, I just decided to experiment with this. I wanted to mix the paint in with the glycerin and water, but I felt like 600 milligrams was just too much. So I put it in the water and glycerin mixture in a smaller container, and then I just squirted some of my acrylic paint right into it. It was kind of globby and gooey there. I don't know what was going on. I didn't measure it. I just kind of squirted it in, mixed it up, and started dunking my flowers into that mixture. And what I discovered is that my flowers didn't seem as saturated as I wanted them to. They were still kind of that light, they kind of had that watercolor look, I guess. And I wanted my flowers to be a really saturated turquoise color. So I squirted a little bit of extra just straight paint and started dunking that into the water and painting with my paintbrush directly onto the leaves. Oh, sorry, directly onto the petals. So you can see here that they're a little bit darker when I do that. And I don't know, I was kind of playing around, painting them, not using any kind of special technique, just painting my flowers directly, mixing the water, and really just experimenting. I think it's kind of hard to explain, but once you have the SOLA wood flowers in your hand and the paintbrush, you just kind of feel out what feels right as you're painting. And you can see, oh, this part of the petal should be a little bit darker, this should be a little bit lighter. Oh, I'll dunk it to even it out, etc., etc. Also, I'm probably supposed to be wearing gloves here. I'm really bad about this. I never wear gloves when I dye with acrylic paint, but I always wash my hands right after, so hopefully it's fine. And another cool technique I've seen people do is that they'll dunk their flowers into the dye mixture so that they're not super saturated, and then they'll do another layer of darkening around the petal edges, so there's a cool kind of like ombre thing going on. And then guys, as kind of a little like side experiment project to all of this, I took all of my SOLA wood flowers that had already been dyed with acrylic paint that were really crunchy because I didn't use glycerin the first time around. They were already dry and everything. So I took them and I dunked those into the glycerin water mixture just to see if when they dried, if they would be softer. So I kind of had two separate experiments going on here because I had heard that you can use glycerin this way, that you can take already dyed acrylic painted flowers and that you can re-wet them, re-dunk them into a glycerin mixture. So I decided I wanted to try it out to soften up these crunchy flowers of mine. And then the next thing I did was just take all of my wet SOLA wood flowers, both the ones that were dyed with acrylic paint and the plain ones. I just kept some of my SOLA wood flowers plain, and I took them all and I just laid them out on the windowsill to dry for 2 days in the sun. The glycerin also made my hands feel really soft, strangely, and if you're wondering, it does not have a smell. So 2 days later, I went and looked at my flowers. So all of the flowers that have acrylic paint on them, whether I dyed them right away after dunking them, or the ones that were already kind of old and crunchy that I re-dunked in glycerin water, all of them were much, much softer to the touch. And the plain ones that I hadn't dyed at all were also softer, although really when SOLA flowers come right out of the package, they're already pretty soft and they don't really need glycerin if you're going to keep them plain white. And it's really interesting the effect that the glycerin water mixture had on the dahlias specifically. It had kind of this wrinkly, twisty effect to the petals, which I actually really liked. I thought it made them look awesome. In the past, when I dyed SOLA wood flowers, I both made the mistake of not using glycerin and drying my flowers in the oven. I think it's probably fine to dry your SOLA wood flowers in the oven as long as they're on really low heat and you use glycerin. So now I would recommend using glycerin and just drying your SOLA wood flowers in the sun. You do absolutely want to dry your SOLA wood flowers completely, because if you don't, if you leave them even a tiny bit damp, there's a possibility that they'll grow mold, and that is just not what you want at all. After my flowers were completely dry, I decided to make a bouquet out of them, and that is a separate video that I'll be releasing really soon. So if you're interested in learning how to make a bouquet with your SOLA wood flowers, tune in for that one. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope this was helpful for you. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in my next video.